Hello and welcome to the history of Babylon 5. Today's episode, Zathras, Zathras II, the Great Machine, and Epsilon III. And here we go. Zathras was a humanoid of unknown origin who took care of the Great Machine on Epsilon III. His brothers, including Zathras, were all named Zathras, with minute differences in pronunciation. Born in approximately 2150, Zathras grew up with his brothers to become a caretaker of the Great Machine. He was first encountered on Babylon IV, and then again when Geoffrey Sinclair returned to the station with the purpose of stealing it. By 2260, Zathras, 110 years old, was the oldest living caretaker on the Great Machine. During his many years working with Varn, and later Drawl, Zathras had studied the machine. Over the years, Zathras became so familiar with the machine that he knew things about the machine that even Drawl had not learned yet. Drawl was also familiar with Babylon 5 and its personnel, learning much about Ambassador Delenn, Ambassador Sinclair, and Captain John Sheridan. Zathras stayed behind with Sinclair on the journey back to use Babylon 4 as a base of operations during the last Great War, 1,000 years in the past. Once Kosh and Alkesh were satisfied that Sinclair was who he said he was, and entered a chrysalis, Zathras began wiping the station systems to remove anything that could pinpoint their origins to satisfy the future. Though he initially appears as a silly and somewhat clumsy creature, Zathras was very dedicated and loyal to the cause, as well as wise and technically proficient. His most repeated phrase is, "No one listens to Zathras." He is depicted as a bit of a simpleton and will tend to talk a lot. The second Zathras. The second Zathras was encountered on Epsilon III by Commander Ivanova, who initially mistook Zathras for Zathras. With Zathras' help, Ivanova was able to boost the signal for the voice of the Resistance so that it could be heard all the way back to Earth. This Zathras has been commonly referred to as Zathras II. This individual was the second of the Zathras family to be seen, and his name differs from his more notable brothers only by a small difference in pronunciation. Like his brother, he is eccentric and will talk a lot. He claims that he talks to everything: walls, ceilings, and most commonly the dirt, saying that they have a lot in common. Dirt is used to everyone walking on it, just like Zathras. And we'll be right back with the Great Machine after this. The Great Machine is a technological marvel of unknown abilities and origin, located below the surface of Epsilon III. Powered by a massive network of advanced fusion reactors, some of which are up to 10 miles across, this complex machine required a sentient being to merge with it in order to regulate and stabilize its operation. With the colossal amount of raw power at its disposal, the machine is known to be able to boost a tachyon signal over dozens of light years, project the operator's mind into deep space, and even control a widening temporal rift. The machine also features a holographic system that can scan and project images at least as far as near orbit, and even blanket all local signals. Though extremely advanced by the standards of the younger races, the machine has its limits, and can be blocked by a sufficiently advanced race, most especially the first ones. In addition to its communication and sensing abilities, the machine features formidable defensive systems, including missile and particle beam weaponry capable of taking out warships in near orbit. Within the machine's great storehouse of knowledge are the designs for many advanced technologies and the facilities to fabricate them. Among the devices known to have originated from the Great Machine are the triluminaries, time stabilizers, the chrysalis device, and the time jump system that allowed Babylon 4 to travel 1,000 years into the past. Access to and from the machine is made possible by several hangar bays, hidden deep in the fissures on the planet's surface. Some of these fissures also house a small cargo transport craft. From the Earth years 1758 to 2258, Varn, the last of his race, served as the guardian of the Great Machine. During this time, a number of caretakers also lived within the machine, assisting Varn in maintaining and repairing the machine systems. After Varn reached the end of his life, he relinquished his duties to Drawl. At 110 years old, Zathras was the oldest living caretaker before leaving to join Valen and Babylon 4 in the distant past. Among those Zathras left behind were his 9 brothers and Spragg. Though the identity of the machine's builders have never been determined, it is known that it is not Varn's race, though they were entrusted with its safekeeping for centuries. However, not all of that race were as trusted as Varn, as a violent group of outcasts exiled centuries earlier would spend 500 years searching for it, to claim it as their own and use it for their own ends. In June 2258, his health began to fail as Varn's long life finally began to come to an end. As his condition worsened, he began to lose control of the great machine, causing seismic tremors and power fluctuations. He reached out to the nearby station, appearing as a hologram to those he felt worthy of taking his place: Commander Sinclair, Ambassador Malari, and the old Drawl. Following a brief conflict between Babylon 5 forces, the EAS Hyperion and the outcasts led by Tachyon, Drawl accepted guardianship of the machine and warned all parties that if they attempted to land, they would be met with lethal force. The outcasts ignored this warning and moved in regardless, only for their cruisers to be annihilated by the powerful particle beam. In late 2259, Drawl broke his silence and made contact with Delenn and Captain Sheridan, pledging his support to the oncoming Shadow War. In 2260, Drawl allows Susan Ivanova to connect to the machine and used it to search for the places where the first one still dwelled. In early 2261, during the darkest days of the Second Shadow War, Stephen Franklin set up a temporary medlab facility to cope with the overflow after Babylon 5 is inundated with refugees from planets destroyed by the Vorlon's planet killers. Later that year, Zathras assisted Susan Ivanova by utilizing the machine's immense power to boost the Voice of the Resistance broadcast to Earth colonies and outposts. Background information. The identity of the race that built the Great Machine has yet to be revealed. Prior to their production, JMS did say it was a possible plot point in one of the TNT TV movies, though it never came to fruition. The Great Machine appears to have been at least partially inspired by the Great Call Machine of Altair 4, featured in the 1956 science fiction film Forbidden Planet. JMS has repeatedly stated that while the big reveal shot in The Voice in the Wilderness Part 1 wasn't designed by the storyboard artist to be an initial homage to Forbidden Planet, the resonance certainly wasn't lost on them. And we'll be right back with Epsilon III after this. Epsilon III is the third planet in the Epsilon system, in the Euphrates sector, Grid Epsilon. The primary jump gate in the system is in high orbit above it. Early scans determined that the planet was seismically stable and entirely lifeless. It has a 0.75 standard gravity, atmosphere 90% CO2 and 10% trace elements. Orbital period is 1.2 standard years. It has an axial tilt of 4 degrees. What surveyors failed to detect was an advanced piece of technology built deep within the planet centuries earlier by an unknown race. Babylon 5 was built in orbit over Epsilon III in 2256. Until 2258, the planet was thought to be stable and uninhabited. Then Varn, the guardian of the Great Machine, began to die, which destabilized the machine and threatened to destroy the planet and endanger Babylon 5. Drawl and Minbari eventually took Varn's place and forbade access to the planet until the appropriate time. This appropriate time was a year later when Drawl revealed himself, rejuvenated to his appearance of 30 years ago, to John Sheridan and Delenn. They journeyed down to Epsilon III to meet with Drawl and establish the Great Machine as an ally of the Army of Light. At that time, he revealed that he was not alone on the planet. Several caretakers lived there as well. The last recorded visit of Babylon 5 personnel to Epsilon III was in 2261, when Ivanova visited the planet to recruit Drawl and the caretakers' help in using the Great Machine to provide the power necessary to transmit the Voice of the Resistance broadcast during the Earth Alliance Civil War. When Babylon 5 was decommissioned in 2281 to prevent it from becoming a navigational hazard, the wreckage from the demolition was caught in Epsilon III's gravity well and burned up in the atmosphere. Thank you for watching the history of Babylon 5. Special thanks to the Babylon Project and all contributors for all information you heard today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. If you have, thank you. And have a great day. Bye-bye.